They say family is everything. But what happens when the very people you trust the most are the ones quietly undoing your life, piece by piece? Emily was the rock, the reliable one, the sister, the daughter, the wife who never said no. She gave, and gave, and gave, until there was nothing left to give. And just when she thought her life was finally calm, her husband found a bank statement that changed everything. This isn't just a story about money. It's about boundaries, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to finally say, "This ends now." If you've ever felt torn between loyalty and self-respect, if you've ever given too much to people who only took more, this one's for you. Let's begin. The kettle whistled, just like it always did at 5:30 p.m. sharp. I poured the water slowly into Ethan's favorite blue mug, chamomile with honey. Just the way he liked it. It was one of those early spring evenings where the light lingered longer than expected, stretching golden fingers across the kitchen tiles. I smiled to myself. 30 years of marriage, and we had settled into a rhythm that felt effortless, peaceful, like an old song you never tire of hearing. He came in from the garden, wiping his hands on a towel. "Smells good in here," he said, kissing my cheek. His eyes, warm and familiar, scanned the countertop, then landed on the kitchen table where I'd left our mail. He reached for the stack, then paused. Something caught his eye. A folded piece of paper, stiff, yellowed at the edges. My stomach dropped a little, not because I knew what it was, but because he suddenly looked so still. "Emily," he said, voice quiet, controlled. "Did you know we've withdrawn over $200,000 from our retirement savings over the last 5 years? My hands froze mid-stir. He laid the paper down carefully, as though it might explode. "It's all here," he continued, his voice calm, but tight. "I've been going over the statements. These aren't our usual expenses. They're large, irregular withdrawals, some close to 10 grand at a time. They all went through the joint account. Every single one has your name on it." I blinked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out, because I did remember helping Lisa when her store was struggling, and Mark. He'd lost his job more than once. Mom needed medical help a few times, and I'd covered it because no one else would. But 200,000? That couldn't be right. I didn't realize it was that much," I said finally. He didn't blink. "Did you give them access to our accounts?" "No," I said instinctively, then hesitated. His eyes darkened. "Then explain this." He slid a printout toward me. A signature. Mine. Or close enough. It was from a bank authorization form I didn't recall signing. The handwriting wasn't sloppy. It was intentional. "This isn't mine," I whispered. "I didn't sign that." "I know," he said. "I already had it checked. It's forged." He leaned forward, hands folded. "Emily, I need to know the truth, not just for me, for us." Outside, the birds kept singing. The kettle cooled, and the quiet peace I thought I'd built began to crack, because my family, the people I had protected, defended, and funded for decades, might have stolen from the one person I swore to share everything with. And worst of all, I didn't know how much of it was my fault. Have you ever believed you were doing the right thing, only to realize you'd been enabling something far worse all along? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Emily confronts the people she once called home. I met Lisa at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place with chipped mugs and too many framed pictures of sailboats on the walls. She chose the booth in the corner, where no one could overhear us. Typical. She was already sipping a latte when I arrived, legs crossed, phone in hand, looking like she didn't have a care in the world. "Hey, Em," she said casually, like we were just two sisters catching up on life, not standing at the edge of something irreversible. I sat down slowly. I didn't bother with small talk. "Did you forge my signature?" I asked. Lisa blinked. "Wow, straight into it." "Don't deflect. Answer me." She set her phone down, let out a breath that was more annoyance than guilt. "Okay, look, I didn't forge anything. I just borrowed your access." "Borrowed?" I said, my voice quieter now, more dangerous. "Lisa, over $200,000 is gone. You took it." "I didn't take it," she said sharply. "I used it. For the business. For family." Without asking, I would have asked, but you never say no. I stared at her. That sentence hit harder than I expected. She leaned forward, softening her tone. "Emily, come on. You always help. It's what you do. I just made it easier." My mouth went dry. "And Mark?" I asked. "Was he in on this?" Lisa looked away. That was answer enough. I left the cafe in a daze. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I pulled over twice before I made it home. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car, staring at the house Ethan and I had worked so hard to keep. The front porch he rebuilt by hand. The flower beds I planted each spring. The life we planned to retire into. All of it. Tainted. When I finally stepped inside, Ethan was waiting in the living room, a file open in his lap. He looked up silent, but I knew he'd been thinking. "I talked to her," I said. "She admitted it. Said she just made it easier." His jaw clenched. "She forged your name," he said. "That's a felony." "I know. Then we need to take action." I shook my head. "It's not that simple." "It is," he snapped. "They stole from us, Emily. You can't keep protecting people who don't care what it costs you." I couldn't speak. The guilt wrapped around my throat like a rope. "I'm not angry that they lied to you," he said, voice softer now. "I'm angry that you let them lie to us both, for years." He stood, walked past me, and closed himself in the guest room. A space we hadn't used in months. Not since his brother passed and we hosted the funeral guests. Now it felt like something else entirely. I stood alone in our living room, surrounded by furniture we chose together, memories etched into the walls. And I asked myself the question I'd avoided for decades. When do you stop calling it family and start calling it what it really is? Control, manipulation, betrayal. And how do you begin to reclaim your life after you finally see it for what it's always been? I couldn't sleep that night. Ethan didn't come back to our room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence that used to feel comforting. Now it was thick, cold, like sleeping inside a question no one wanted to answer. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked barefoot down the hallway, my fingers brushing the walls. I passed the photo gallery, family vacations, birthdays, the framed quote Ethan gave me for our 10th anniversary. "Love is built on trust, not time." I stopped at the linen closet. Buried behind folded towels was a box I hadn't opened in years, my old journals. I carried them to the kitchen, sat at the table, and began to read. Page after page, I saw my younger self, always putting someone else first, picking up Lisa from parties when she was too drunk to drive, bailing Mark out after he gambled away his rent money, dropping off groceries for Mom when she claimed she was too tired to shop, even though she'd just had her hair done. I'd forgotten how many times I'd written the words, "They just need me right now," It's temporary. But temporary had stretched into decades. By dawn, my eyes burned. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. The next day, I visited Mom. She was sitting on the porch in her usual chair, a blanket over her knees, sipping weak coffee from her favorite mug, the one that said, "World's Greatest Grandma." Even though she rarely saw her grandkids, she looked surprised to see me. "Emily," she said, her voice bright but wary. "To what do I owe the visit? I know everything," I said. Her smile faded. "About what?" "About Lisa forging my signature, about the money, about how you sat back and watched it happen." She sighed, looked out at the yard like the flowers had something important to say. "I didn't think it would go that far." "Didn't you?" "I thought you'd understand," she said almost gently. "You've always been the strong one, the dependable one." My throat tightened. "That doesn't mean you get to exploit me." She flinched, barely, but I saw it. "You don't understand what it's like," she whispered. "To be old, to need help, to worry about your children." "And what about worrying about me?" I said. "Did you ever stop to think how this would affect me and Ethan?" She didn't answer. I stood there, suddenly realizing I wasn't going to get the apology I wanted. Not from her. Maybe not from any of them, because they didn't see what they did as wrong. They saw it as necessary, justified. I left without saying goodbye. Back home, I found Ethan in the backyard, pruning the hedges like he was trying to tame something wild and uncontrollable. "I want to know everything," I said, "about what we can do, legally, financially." He looked up, startled. "I'm in," I added. "I'm ready to stop pretending they didn't take something from us." For the first time in days, his shoulders relaxed. "Then we start tomorrow," he said. I nodded. That night I slept better. Not because anything was fixed, but because I had finally stopped defending the wrong people. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing me. The next morning, Ethan and I sat across from a woman named Karen Chu, a no-nonsense attorney with silver-streaked hair and eyes that didn't blink when the truth got uncomfortable. She listened quietly as I laid everything out: the forged signature, the stolen funds, the years of emotional manipulation. I expected her to flinch at the words, "my own sister," but she didn't. She just scribbled notes in a leather-bound journal. When I finished, she looked at me and said, "How far are you willing to go?" I hesitated. Ethan didn't. "We want to pursue all legal options." Karen nodded. "Then you'll need to decide. Is this about recovering the money? Or is it about making a boundary they can't ignore?" I glanced at Ethan. His jaw was set, his fingers laced tightly together. I took a deep breath. "Both." Karen prepared the documents: official letters of intent, demands for repayment, and notices of potential legal action if they refused. I signed each one with steady hands. Later that week, we delivered them, personally. We met Lisa at her office. She wore heels too high for her age, and a blazer that screamed, "I'm still winning." Her smile flickered when she saw the envelope. "You're not serious," she said, flipping through the pages. "I'm completely serious," I replied. "You're threatening your own family with lawyers?" "No," I said. "I'm drawing a line that should have been drawn a long time ago." She laughed, short and sharp. "And what about all those years I was drowning, and you just kept handing me floaties? You trained me for this." "That's the part I regret most," I said quietly. Mark's reaction was different, panicked, defensive. "You can't do this, Em," he said when I showed up at his apartment. "We're family. We've always been family." "I'm not cutting you off," I told him. "I'm holding you accountable." "That's the same thing." "No," I said. "It's not. Accountability is love with boundaries. This is your chance to show me you care enough to step up." He looked like he wanted to cry but didn't know how. The last visit was to Mom. She was sitting in her usual chair, the blanket across her lap, that same chipped mug in hand. When I handed her the envelope, she didn't open it. "You're turning. You're back on us," she said, her voice trembling. "No," I said, kneeling so we were eye to eye. "I'm finally turning toward myself. For the first time in my life, I didn't apologize for making someone uncomfortable. And the strangest thing, it didn't feel cruel. It felt like freedom." That night, I lay in bed beside Ethan, who reached over and took my hand. "You really did it," he said. "No," I whispered. "I finally started, because setting boundaries isn't the end of love. It's where love begins to respect itself. And I was done being the only one in the room who didn't know that." The letters went out. The silence came in. For days, none of them responded. No calls, no texts, not even one of Mom's passive-aggressive voicemails. It was as if my entire family had evaporated overnight. I expected to feel grief or panic. Instead, I felt something strange and unfamiliar. Stillness. Ethan noticed it too. We no longer slept in separate rooms. He moved back into our bedroom like nothing had happened, but I knew it had. We were different now. Wounded, yes, but facing the same direction again. One night, we sat at the kitchen table going over our finances. The numbers weren't pretty. Retirement would need to be reworked, travel plans postponed, comfort scaled back. "We're not broke," Ethan said, circling, a number in red pen. "But we were robbed, and it's okay to be angry about that." I nodded. "I am." And I meant it, because the guilt was finally starting to lift, and in its place was anger, clean, justified. Not the rage that destroys, but the kind that rebuilds. I began seeing a therapist. Her name was Adrienne. She didn't flinch when I told her that I'd spent most of my adult life as the emotional ATM of my family. "You weren't helping," she said one session. "You were enabling. There's a difference." I thought I was keeping the family together. "No," she said gently. "You were holding the weight of a broken system and calling it love." That line stayed with me. So when Lisa finally emailed, short, sharp, and full of resentment, I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was only to say, "I'm not sending money. I'm not fixing this. I still love you. But love isn't silence, and it isn't surrender. It has a backbone now." A week later, I received a letter in the mail from Mark. It was handwritten, shaky, and full of misspellings, but the words were sincere. He apologized, not for being broke, but for choosing to stay broken and letting me carry the cost. Inside the envelope was a check for $500, a fraction of what he owed, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the attempt. I called him. We talked for over an hour. Not just about the debt, but about us, about what went wrong, about what could still be repaired. That same week, I visited Mom. She opened the door herself. No mug, no blanket, just her and the quiet. "I've been thinking," she said before I even spoke. "Maybe I wasn't as helpless as I made myself out to be." Tears welled in her eyes. "Maybe I expected too much of you because I didn't know how to expect more of myself." I sat beside her. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just talked. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Lisa never replied again, and for the first time I accepted that as her choice, not my failure. Some people change, some people don't. But I had. I no longer needed to prove my love by sacrificing myself. And in that shift, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because, finally, I wasn't the one breaking myself to hold it all together. 1 year later, Ethan and I stood in our backyard under soft golden light, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the smell of grilled peaches and rosemary chicken. It wasn't a grand celebration, just a quiet gathering for our 31st anniversary. A few close friends, a simple cake, no speeches. But to me, it felt like the most honest celebration of our lives, because we had earned every bit of it. The losses had been real, financially, emotionally. There were times I thought our marriage might not make it, that I wouldn't make it, that maybe I was too far gone into the role of caregiver, fixer, peacemaker, to ever come back to myself. But standing there holding Ethan's hand as he poured drinks for our neighbors and made bad jokes about retirement, I knew something deeper. We didn't get everything back, but we got the only thing that mattered, ourselves. I still hadn't heard from Lisa. I'd stopped checking, not out of spite, but out of peace. I heard she was struggling. Someone mentioned her store had closed, that she was looking for work. The old me would have wired money without a second thought. The new me, I sent her a list of job openings in her field, with a short message. You're capable. You don't need me to save you. You just need to start. She never replied. That was okay. Some relationships are meant to be loved from afar, or remembered for who they were before the damage took root. Mark kept in touch, slowly, irregularly, but consistently. He sent what he could, even when it was just a $20 check and a note that said, "Still trying." Mom had softened. We had tea every other Sunday, sometimes in silence, sometimes in stories. We didn't talk about the past anymore. We just started where we were. And me? I started volunteering at a local support group for women dealing with financial abuse from family members. I sat in circles with strangers who shared the same ache I once thought was mine, alone. I told them, you are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for saying no. You are not responsible for holding your family together with your silence. One woman cried when I said that. Another hugged me so tightly I forgot how to breathe for a moment. Sometimes healing doesn't feel like fire. It feels like air. Quiet, invisible, but vital. That night, Ethan and I sat on the porch, our feet propped up, a playlist from the 90s humming low in the background. He turned to me and said, "If we could go back, would you do it differently?" I thought for a long moment. "No," I said softly. Because I needed to lose the version of me who thought love meant saying yes to everything. I had to meet the woman I am now. He smiled. "She's kind of a badass." I laughed. "Yeah, I think she is." And just like that, with nothing left to hide, no more secrets to keep or debts to pay, we watched the stars blink on, one by one. Not everything had been repaired, but everything had been rebuilt. And this time, the foundation was mine. Emily's story reminds us that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is, no more. What would you do if your own family forged your name and drained your future? Share your thoughts in the comments. Type 2 if you believe Emily made the right choice. Type 7 if you've been through something similar. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. to Sophia's Revenge Stories for more true-to-life family betrayal stories.